Hello, and welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and the Poison Pen is delighted to have with us today as our very special guest authors, New York Times bestselling Jayne Krentz and Christina Dodd. Now, before we start our program, hi ladies, I do have the obligatory commercial message. The Poison Pen does have copies of both authors' books available. We have signed hardcovers of All the Colors of Night by Jayne, and we have a very on-trend trade paperback edition of Wrong Alibi by Christina, as well as a few select hardcover copies of Wrong Alibi. Now, all of our copies are signed by the authors and dated, so they have that extra special collector's cachet. And Christina, cachet is our word of the week, so
I'll remember and see if I can work it into a sentence.
So if you're interested in signed copies while they last, feel free to contact the Poison Pen Bookstore after the event, either by phone or through our website. And that's the end of our commercial message. So welcome, Jayne and Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to get out once in a while.
Even virtually.
Yes.
Let's start with my first question for you is about your backstory. We all know about your rise to stardom as best-selling authors, but who was Jayne and who was Christina before you became authors? Why don't we start with you, Jayne?
Before I became an author, that would be my library phase. when I was working as a librarian for about 10 years there. And before that, it was mostly waiting tables. And I consider those two very good career back stories for any author. You can't go wrong with waiting tables a few times and working in a library. So,
Christina?
I started out as a reader like every other writer in the entire world, and my mother thought I would be a librarian. But yeah. But it was my mother and I when we were pretty poor, and so I went looking for a job that I could get through school really fast. And I became a drafter. I designed roads, mines, and sawmills. And actually, you get right down to it. And I've told Jayne this before. When you start out designing a sawmill and you start out with bare ground, and then you do the foundation, and then you design the walls, and then you design the machinery, it takes years. And so it's a great way. It's very much like writing a book where you just start out with one word. And when you get done, you've got 100,000 words. And it takes a long time, and it's a lot of plotting. And a lot of time you can't see the end, but it does come as long as you keep working.
I like that. That's great philosophy of how to write a book.
Plus, I can do math where Jayne is just hopeless.
That was never an option for me. Anything involving math would have been a disaster for me. That's very true.
What was it like publishing your first book? Were you overnight sensations? Was it a slow march? Why don't we start with you, Christina, this time?
I was a draftsman, as I said, and I told my husband when we were going to have our first child, I said, well, I'm going to quit and become a writer, because how much trouble can one little baby be? So actually, one little baby is a lot of trouble. And then there was two little babies, and it did take 2 children and 3 completed manuscripts and 10 years before I was published.
Yeah, it took me a good 6 years, and I don't think I completed a whole lot of those manuscripts. In those days, you turned in 3 chapters and an outline. if I couldn't sell on that, I did not write the rest of the book. But
very smart.
And I can't even tell you what all those 3 chapters were about now. But I do. I will say that without naming numbers of actual years, Christina and I started out before the self-publishing way of doing things was available. So we didn't have any choice except it was New York Publishing or bust.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go into your new books, the books that brought you here today. Jayne, tell us a little bit about All the Colors of Night.
Okay, this is book 2 in a trilogy centered on a small town called Fog Lake that was the victim of a secret government paranormal experiment gone horribly awry. And now this was back in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, when, yes, the CIA and the government really were doing a lot of serious paranormal research, and we'll never know how much money they poured into this. I remember seeing the paranormal lab outside of Duke University. I mean, it wasn't just the governments. The universities were seriously involved in this stuff. And the big fear at the time was that the USSR was going to get ahead of us. And for those of you who are too young to remember, the USSR is Russia today. Okay. we're still worried about if they're going to get ahead of us. So for about 20 years, there was a huge amount of resources, taxpayer money, poured into paranormal research. So the research on this was really easy, because once you open the closet doors on paranormal research in the late 20th century, it all just comes spilling out. I didn't have to invent anything, really. So this is book 2, but I want to emphasize that each book can be read alone. So if you want to sample the series, you can jump in on this one. And it will end with the next book. But the first book was The Vanishing. And then All the Colors at Night. But like I said, all 3 are standalone mysteries. So.
And you have your 2 characters are Chaston North and.
Yeah, the hero is, they both got some psychic talents because of being exposed to this experiment that went horribly awry. They're not them, but their grandparents. And so it changed some DNA stuff, and it's come on down through the line. So both the heroine and the hero have talent. And I should spell out for those who like paranormal that I don't do supernatural paranormal. If you're looking for vampires and werewolves and witches, this isn't for you. Or it is for you, just don't expect vampires and werewolves. I like to work with the psychic vibe, because to me it feels just like one step beyond intuition, and everybody kind of grasps the concept of intuition, and that's the vibe that I like to work with. So and these 2 characters, it's basically a murder mystery, except with this paranormal vibe in the background.
And it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. I pay her to say that.
Yeah. No. I think I paid you.
Christina, what about Wrong Alibi?
I years ago saw The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, and I have been wanting to do an homage to that the entire time with a female protagonist. So what we have here is Evie Jones, who at 18 is an innocent person. She actually admits later that she's too stupid to live. And she gets her first job and moves to Alaska, and she is framed for embezzlement and a gruesome double murder. And she is convicted and sent to prison for 99 years and manages to get away. And she goes into hiding, and she actually, as she's in hiding, she is developing herself into a person that we'd all like to be. She has a lot of talents. She learns how to use them. She learns how to do internet research, and what she's always doing, what she's always trying to do, is find the man who framed her and who committed the murders. And she wants her life back, of course. And she also wants justice for the 2 killings.
It's really great. I read it. Trust me, you're gonna love it. It's got.
I told you I paid her.
It's got a bit of a Gothic vibe, and I think it's because you used Alaska, which. And there's kind of a close, intimate feeling in the mystery that I think came partly from the location that you.
Yes, Alaska was just fascinating to me. It was it's so cold and it's so huge, and it's almost a character in the book. It was a lot of fun to do the research.
Did you choose Alaska, Christina, because it's an easy place for someone to disappear? I mean, in today's world.
That's exactly it. And there is some lawlessness there. I think you can actually disappear there, and there are people who will help you because they kind of understand the situation.
I have to give you credit, Christina, for your heroine, your protagonist, because at the beginning, you make her seem to be kind of a trope or a certain type of character that we all see in movies or books, where you think, how can this person be this clueless?
Don't go downstairs with the candle.
That's exactly it. There's moments where I'm saying, no, don't do that. No. And she does, but you give her a rational reason for doing it. So in the end, you're not mad at her, and you watch her kind of turn into this almost instrument of vengeance. Was that a difficult character arc to work with?
Speaking as somebody who was an 18-year-old at one point and too stupid to live, no, it wasn't difficult at all. To me, there are people who are really irritated to read that character. And I think, were you always wise? Were you always smart? Did you always do the right thing? Because I really was an idiot. And I have matured slightly over the years. John will not necessarily always agree, but and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to become the person you should be, who does the right thing and who's smart enough to look around and who doesn't believe the bullies and the liars. And I admire that. I think it, and I always think it's always difficult. I don't think it's ever fun to take that journey. And that's why it's a good thing to read about. And it's a good thing to write about, because you really get the feel for it and it can be done.
It's a universal experience too, because I would bet that the people who don't want to read the character are the ones who have really bad memories of when they were that naive and they don't want to relive that feeling.
Yeah.
But everybody else who came out of it does understand it, and you're rooting for it.
It's hard to read it. It makes you. It is like reading Rebecca, the one with Daphne du Maurier, where that girl is just so stupid every minute of the day, and you're reading it and you're thinking, stop it, but you relate to it. That's why you read. That's why you keep reading.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about romance genre and suspense. Really don't have the concept of series in terms of a character that continues, but you do have books that are linked together. You've done trilogies and even more kind of connected books. Jayne, I read a review or actually an interview with you where you said writing these kinds of books was like juggling chainsaws. Can you kind of elaborate on writing connected books and what that means?
Well, it probably goes back to the fact that I'm not good at math because I lose track. I every time I start something I think will be a series, or something that I hope will be a series, or even a trilogy, I tell myself, this time I'm going to make notes. This time I'm going to have a list of characters. I am going to write down everything that I invent for this book, so I don't have to reread this book to figure out where I went when I start the next one. And I never do. I just, once I get rolling on the book, I don't want to go stop and do the bookkeeping, so to speak. So for me, it's something that takes a lot of the kind of mental energy I don't like to use, which is organizing and logic and all that kind of good stuff. I just want to write. So, also, my other problem is I never go back and reread my own books. So so it's a chore to go back and reread my own books. It's easier to go to one of the review sites and find one of those reviews that gives you the whole plot, including the names.
Yes, exactly.
What about you, Christina? How do you approach writing books that have some common tie?
To me, it's easy. Like Jayne, I don't make notes, which is really kind of not the smartest thing in the world, but the thing that I have that Jayne doesn't seem to have is I can actually forget the name of the hero and the heroine while I'm in the middle of the book. So I do have to have them written down somewhere. But standalones give a better sense of satisfaction to the reader. But I this, John, occasionally I have a hook at the end too, to take you into the next book. I don't know. Series are just, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time if it's in the same place. And that's really nice. And I love to do really quirky characters, secondary characters, and there's only so many quirkies you can do. So probably if you're in the same place for a while, it's a good thing.
And I think that there's a long tradition of continuing communities, continuing series, continuing characters, especially in the mystery and suspense world, which, I mean, a lot of mystery careers have been built on a series featuring a single character and his pals or her pals and the town they work in. And it goes back to Sherlock Holmes, for crying out loud. So I think it's just part of the genre that we're halfway into, sort of into that I'm halfway into with my suspense. And Christina with this book is really all the way into it. This is a real woman in jeopardy book that you wrote, Christina. Yeah. So
My next question is for Christina. You write some truly scary books. I mean, you send shivers down readers' spines, yet you yourself are a reading chicken. And I can say this because I'm a reading chicken too. How do
Oh,
you?
you're way worse than me when it comes to, I mean, you read way scarier books.
Yes, but and I have to be honest and tell those tuning in that Christina's books are scary, but they're not graphic or gory, and that's kind of where I put the line up for myself as a reader. But do you ever scare yourself when you're writing these books, and how do you maintain that level of tension in the story?
What I do when I'm writing a scary scene is I write a couple of pages and then I run away and I write something else in the middle of the book. And then when I got myself back together again, I come back and I write another couple of pages and then I run away again. I don't watch horror. I don't read really, really scary books. I am a chicken. That's all there is to it. So to write this stuff is conceiving of it. It's not difficult. We all know what we're afraid of, and we all know who the monsters are, and we all recognize them. And so I know what to write about because I know what I'm afraid of. But actually putting it on paper, it's a chore. It's tough.
Now let's turn the corner and talk a little bit about voice. As a reader, the way I connect with an author is how they're telling their story, their writer's voice. Can you talk a little bit about your own writing voice, how you would characterize it for somebody that hasn't read you? How would you describe that? Why don't we start with Jayne?
Oh, great. Let's start with old Jayne over there. Well, I can tell you that I have tried to change my voice at various points in my career. I have tried to go darker. I have tried to go more serious, and I can't. It kind of is what it is. And at some point along the way, with the advice from a friend years ago, who does write dark and does write deep kinds of trauma mysteries, and I said, I can't help it. I keep going light. I keep going light, and I can't help it. And she says, I've tried to go light, and I can't go there. She said, I'm stuck with my voice. You're stuck with yours. And then the best thing she thought we could do with it, and this was really the most intelligent thing I've ever heard when it comes to voice, is figure out what you do right well, and then sharpen it, make it stronger. Whatever your strength is, make it stronger. So I would say my voice revolves around the way I like to tell a story, which is mostly through dialogue. I get very impatient with narrative. It slows me down. I would just like to say that if you come into one of my books and they see a paragraph of description and narration, I want you to slow down and read it very carefully, because it probably took me hours to write that part of the story. But when I'm in a dialogue situation, the characters start talking, I'm flying. That's how the story unrolls in my head, is through the dialogue. So I'm a dialogue-driven author. I have a sense of humor in the books, and I like a story that revolves around two people who have to overcome issues of trust, at least long enough to survive. And I think trust is one of the biggest risks that every person ever makes, any person makes, and we make it, and we have to do it over and over again. It's really a dangerous business to trust, emotionally as sometimes physically. And I like to work with those conflicts, especially between the hero and heroine.
So Jayne and I write about the same way. No, it actually is true. People who read me and who read Jayne and read Jayne and read me recognize that we are very similar. I read Jayne for years while I was trying to learn how to write, and I've read her ever since. And I certainly picked up some things from you, especially how to inject that humor so it wasn't just a big old thump in the middle of the scene. But I think for me, and for Jayne is we kind of have the same moral compass, and that matters when you're talking about your voice. You have to have a belief that things will come out well at the end, or at least the hope. And to me, that's very important. I also, as she said, humor is important. If you're going to write really terrible scenes, I like people, when people are in bad situations, they tend to be funny. And I think that's really important to get that into the books too. I've always said I wrote serious books that somehow got translated into funny.
I think I like the fact that you mentioned the moral compass, because I've always felt that that's something an author can't hide. It really is embedded in the voice, not necessarily in the story, but somehow it's in the voice. And I've always felt that if readers go back to an author again and again, it's probably because their moral compasses resonate with each other, and the author doesn't have a totally skewed view of the world, so to speak, compared to what the reader has. I think it's probably one of the reasons we either fall in love with an author or not. And it's probably that the core values, the world views, and just the way they tell a story.
Just the way they tell a story, yeah.
Both of you have written different kinds of romance, suspense, storylines. Was that an intentional decision, or did you stumble upon it? Talk a little bit about writing different kinds of books within a broad framework and how that can impact an author. And I would start with you again, Jayne.
What's it always me? You pick it up.
You can start with me. I don't care. I actually know we have different answers on this.
All right, you start first, Christina, because I got to think.
Okay, all right. I started out when I was trying to write, when I was having the children, and I had writing the 3 manuscripts. I wrote a historical, and then I wrote a short contemporary romance, and then I wrote another historical, and it was book 3 that sold. It was Candle in the Window. And so I just wrote what I wanted to read, and I'm a pretty broad reader. And once you get published, I was writing historical romance because they want you to stick with the same market. And so I wrote a lot of historical romances, but I had that contemporary romantic suspense in the background. And I got restless and I wanted to write some more of those. So I wrote some more of those, and then I sold that. And of course, everybody who read those said, well, she can only write historical romance. And so I got established as romantic suspense and historical romance. And then I got a great idea for paranormal romance. And by now the publishers were just throwing up their hands going, oh, whatever. And they let me do that, which that kind of turned into, those series are probably my cult series. And so I was kind of writing all 3 for a while. And then eventually I wanted to actually write suspense. And so that's what I've been headed for the last 8 books. As I did do it on purpose. But the side benefit has been that I still enjoy writing. A lot of writers just wear out. And to me, I have challenged myself so much. It's all difficult and it's all exciting. And I enjoy myself immensely with my writing. And so that's been the benefit with writing so many different things. People say, would you ever go back and write another historical, or would you write another paranormal? Well, sure, if I get an idea, you bet. And again, the publishers will just throw up their hands and go, whatever.
What she said.
That's not true. You didn't do it all on purpose.
No, I would just like to preface this by saying, any aspiring authors out there, you probably know by now that I actually ended up with 3 names. And I would just like to say that was not the plan at the beginning. There was no plan at the beginning. And I do not recommend it as a way to develop a career, because it is so difficult to promote 3 different names. The positive thing for readers is that when they pick up one of my names, they know which of my fictional landscapes they're going to get. And I have learned over the years that fictional landscapes are very important to readers. Some only want that historical setting. Others only want the futuristic. Others only want contemporary. And I respect that. I read that way too. I totally get it. But it does keep me fresh, as Christina was saying, when I can move from one world into the other. I come out of one and I need a break, and then I get excited about the other world, because I do write historical, contemporary, and futuristic now. So that's the benefit to me. It's a benefit to the reader. But as a career move, it was, well, I only did it in the first place because I managed to kill off careers along the way, and I had to reinvent myself. And that's why most of those names came out of the hat. It's because I had, nobody will touch me with a 10-foot pole in publishing, so I better find a way to reinvent myself. That's how it happened.
Between the two of you, you've written more than 100 books.
Jayne has written.
We're trying to be kind and wrap a bit of pause around the numbers, but
this is 59. This is number 59.
Rest are mine.
But with both of your long and distinguished writing careers, as you look back, what advice would you give to someone today that's starting out? And I'll let you decide who wants to start first.
I'll start this one because I do have a strong one. I have a couple of strong feelings, but when you're just starting out, I would strongly advise you to get involved with a really good writers group where you feel comfortable and you feel like you're on the same page, so to speak, with the other writers. And if you need advice on this, I would say go contact your local public library. They will have information about local groups. They will have information about national groups, and a lot of the groups have gone virtual now. So you can join them even if you don't live in the same state. And that might be where your colleagues, your people who are trying to write what you're trying to write. And one of the other advantages of doing this is because I think that's where the first tremors, the first hints of the next new trend is coming from. I think it doesn't come from the publishers. It doesn't come from editors. It comes from authors. And that's where you're going to be mixing and mingling and hearing. I remember the first time somebody said, oh, they were going to write a vampire. And I thought, oh, that'll never sell. I said that a lot at various points in my career. But I heard that at a conference. That's where I picked up the first, and that just became a huge side of the market. So writers group, find the writers group, go to the public or contact the library, since you can't just walk in the door right now, to help you find one.
Oh, me now. Of course, the basic advice is put your butt in the chair and write. The standard is if you write a page every day in a year, you've got a book. But more than that, there are people out there in the world who will tell you that they can tell you the correct way to write, and they'll tell you there's only that one way to write. And that is the advice that makes me like sit on the floor and drum my heels. It makes me so angry. I know a lot of writers, and I know a lot of writers who write the same way, and I know a lot of writers who don't write the same way. Jayne starts a book and rambles through it, and I have to tell you, if I did it that way, I would be in a total panic the entire time. I plotted out ahead of time. If I got into the middle of a book and I didn't know how it ended, I would be frozen with fear. And so I write a synopsis. She doesn't. I know people who go on vacation to write. I know people who have written with their kids crawling all over them all the time. If you sit down and you write and words come out and at the end of the day, you've got pages, then you're doing it the right way, and just keep on doing it, and edit a lot.
I would just add that I've been doing this a long time now, a while now, and no two books get written quite the same way.
Yes.
Not just me and I don't write the next book. I won't write the next book the same way I wrote this book. They fall together at their own pace and they're in their own way. And there's no rules. Just don't worry about the rules.
Oh, good. Can I tell my story?
Yeah.
When I was writing Touch of Darkness. I wrote about the first 50, it was on contract. I had to get the book done on time, and I wrote about the first 50 pages. And then I had to get into some really tough stuff with the hero and heroine. I didn't want to write it. So I was just sitting around thinking, I don't know what to do, but I'm on deadline. I have to finish this book. And so I thought, finally, what do you want to write? And I got to about page 200, skipped ahead to about page 200, and I started writing there, and it was kind of fun. And then I thought, well, now what do you want to write? So I wrote the climax, and then I went back and wrote between like 100 and 200, and then I wrote back from 50 to 100. So basically I wrote Touch of Darkness backwards. Now, nobody ever said to me, you wrote that book reads like it was written backwards. It hit the New York Times just beautifully. And I've never done that before, and I haven't ever done it since, but that's not the point. It was just put your butt in the chair and write any way you can. And that's what I did. It's always so interesting to see what's going to happen when you're writing a book.
Let's take another turn now, because you both have said you were readers before you were writers. What have you been reading recently, or even not so recently, that you'd like to share with readers out there? We'll start with you, Jayne.
Oh, okay. Well, I would really like to recommend Victoria Thompson's City of Schemes. This is the latest book in her Counterfeit Lady series. This is a historical period mystery set in the Gilded Age of New York. Well, 1920, is it? Anyway, it's glamour. It's got a glamour vibe to it, and a murder mystery. But the heroine, I just love the heroine because she is a reformed con lady, con artist, and her skill set as a con artist enabled her to solve crimes. And so that's Victoria Thompson, City of Schemes. And then, because family is family, and because I really love the book, I got to recommend Cousin Mike Krentz's Dead Already. Okay, so this is a cousin by marriage, so you have to take, I'd have blurbed him anyway, right? Because this family is family. But I really like the book. He's an the author, Mike, is an ex-ER or retired emergency room physician. So he really knows that world. And he writes those scenes of the action and the rush in the emergency room brilliantly. And this is a murder mystery that comes out of the emergency room, and it features character. This is a little different from a lot of medical mysteries, and this is really a character-driven novel. So that's Mike Krentz, Dead Already. He's not dead.
Okay, mine is nonfiction, and John should recognize this, I'm sure. It's Clanlands, and it's written by the two actors who were in Outlander, and they are both Scottish, and they went on a tour of Scotland. And it's a roaringly funny book. These guys are hysterical, and where I'm stuck in the house and I can't travel, this is the next best thing. I really am enjoying the book. I think I definitely recommend it to anybody who needs to get out and who loves Scotland. And then the other thing I'm reading, I've been doing a lot of rereading lately. And The Bear and the Nightingale is the first in the series, and I've managed to skip these other two. And this one is The Girl in the Tower. It's the second one. And this one's the Winter of the Witch. And these are by Catherine Arden. And it's set in Russia, and there is a supernatural thing going on. It's a very fairy tale type Russia. And I learned so much. It was an absolutely fascinating series. And I think it's officially a YA series, but I never got that. It's just because it's about a young woman doesn't mean that it's YA or a child. It was really fascinating. This is my second time through, and I have greatly enjoyed it, and it has transported me to a different land. And that's exactly what I'm looking for right now.
And what about you, John? You're the one in the store. What have you got?
Yes.
Thank you for asking, Jayne. I have two books that I'm really pushing. One is by an author I discovered about 2 years ago, Minerva Spencer. Her new book is Notorious. And if you're a fan of historical romance, it's the quintessential blue stocking meets the roguish rake. They're forced by circumstances into marriage. It just has all those elements I love about historical romance. It's very familiar, yet she has a very fresh voice to it. and voice is how I read. So that's Minerva Spencer, and it's Notorious. We do have a few signed copies of the Poison Pen, like Jayne and Christina's book. So if you're interested, give us a call or log in. The other one is a book that's coming in February called Finley Donovan is Killing It. The character is a romantic suspense novelist. Sound familiar, Jayne and Christina? And she's divorced. Her husband is withholding money as a kind of a power play. She's weeks, if not months, behind on her manuscript that she's supposed to deliver. She's meeting with her editor at a restaurant, and they're talking about the plot, and the woman at the table next to them mistakenly thinks that the protagonist, Finley Donovan, does something different for a living, and she thinks Finley could help her with her own marital problems. So that's the start of this series. It's kind of like an accidental hitman, maybe not. What I loved about this book, she's a YA author, Elle Cosimo, and I'm probably getting her name wrong, but this is her first adult mystery suspense novel. It's Finley Donovan is Killing It. If you love that sense of humor, it reminds me of Susan Isaac's Compromising Positions, or Jennifer Cruzy, who I've missed. I love her books like Tell Me Lies. So those are two that I absolutely loved. I would recommend them after you've read All the Colors of Night and Wrong Alibi. So with our reading portion of the program done, I do have one question for you that I've longed to ask. Both of you have done so many different author events, both virtual and in person. You could ask so many questions. Is there any question someone's never asked you that you wish they had? And why don't we start with you, Christina?
I have always wished that people would ask me, how do I get on your newsletter list? You go to my website, you fill out the form. I never will sell your name. I send fabulously funny newsletters. They'll keep you cheered up, and I'll tell you about books to read. And it's the right way to go if you want to keep up with the book news.
Jayne?
I just really wish that Netflix would call and ask me if they could make a TV series out of one of my books.
There you have it, Netflix. Jayne?
I want to change my answer.
Now, we have been getting some questions from your fans on Facebook, so I'll pause here to ask you the first one. The first question is, how do you balance your work and your family? Or do you? I'll start with you, Jayne.
I think, back at the start of my career, I had been working for 10 years as a librarian, as I said, and I took the same working habits from that world into my writing world. So I'm a fairly disciplined writer, frankly, and I start in the mornings around 7 o'clock and I work until about noon or 1 o'clock. And after that is when I do the grocery shopping or go shopping at Nordstrom's or experiment with a new recipe so I guess I tried to take the work habits from the work world into my writing world.
My kids are grown up. They moved out. They're supporting themselves. Yes. And so it's basically my husband and I, and if you are on my newsletter or on my social media, you know that he takes great care of me, and we work together a lot. He builds things and he does the accounting and stuff like that. And basically I'm expected to do two things around the house, and that is cooking and writing. And I do both of those very well. So it's a good thing I'm not doing the building, because then it would be a disaster.
You have some lovely shelves behind you, Christina. Were those crafted by your husband?
They were not crafted. They were designed by my husband. Do you want me to show everybody the storage?
Yeah, I think that was kind of amazing.
Okay. Now when my husband designed my office, of course, I said we have to have lots and lots of bookshelves, and he said you need storage. And so I'm going to turn you around. I'll do it really slowly so you don't get sick. All right. See? Can you see it? There's my storage.
Amazing.
I actually did a video showing off my storage, and the great thing was I was inside, and to do the video. And I clicked on the little thing to make my camera start working. And of course, I couldn't move the shelves because I got it off kilter. And so I was just stuck inside, and there's this video of the shelves going, I was trying to get it to work.
Get me out of here.
Yep, pretty much.
What can readers expect next from you as an author? Jayne?
Glad you asked. Well, as we know, I do have a couple of other names, and the other one that's coming up next is my Amanda Quick name. And that world right now is 1930s glamour Hollywood, the glitter and glamorous side of California, not the serious dark side of the Depression, but the movie side, basically, the fun side. And that's the next book coming up is The Lady Has a Past. And for those who have read others in the series, this is Raina's story. Raina is the mysterious woman from New York who is now working as a private investigator in Burning Cove, California, and she goes missing.
Christina?
My book is called Point Last Seen, unless it ends up being changed. And I developed a small town on Big Sur, California, which has got actually a kind of a psychic vibe. Jayne encouraged that entirely. They have a legend that says whenever the fog rolls in and then rolls out again, they will find a lost soul. And our hero goes down on the beach, and a woman washes up on shore, and she's dead. He thinks, oh no, I have to carry her up, and picks her up, and she throws up all the water and comes back to life. And he knows he's found his first lost soul. So that's the setup, and it's rolling from there.
Now, is there any truth, Jayne, that we might see a reemergence of one of your pseudonyms?
Oh, the Jayne Castle Dust Bunny crowd. Well, for those of you who don't know me, the third name that I'm currently working under is Jayne Castle, and those are futuristic settings, another planet kind of thing. Basically, it's Las Vegas on Harmony, the name of the planet. And I have about 10 of those books out now, and I have brilliant plots and really clever ideas about how the psychic vibe would work. And I've got a great narrative part. I did really good narrative stuff on this one with underworld jungles and all kinds of stuff. And nobody gives a darn about any of it because all they want are dust bunnies. And the dust bunnies are little psychic animals in the book. And they have just taken over my Jayne Castle world. And yes, there's another one coming out. I don't have a pub date yet. The title is Guild Boss. The dust bunny's name is Otis, for those who care. And I'll have a pub date soon in the spring to let you know about.
So you should get on Jayne's newsletter too.
Good plan.
Wow.
How do they do that, Jayne?
They can go to my website or my Facebook page. My website is www.jayneandkrentz.com. Jayne with a Y.
We do have another question from one of your rather endearing readers. The question is, some of your readers savor every word that you write. Are you both savory or devourers of books?
I'm a devourer.
Yeah.
If it's either I'm interested or I'm not, and if I'm devouring, it's a good one. And if I'm plodding along, which is no.
I guess I think it would depend on how you define savor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I do hate
nonfiction, then you can savor.
Well, I think even sometimes fiction, like you mentioned, Rebecca, that's definitely not a fast-paced book, but it is a very compelling book.
It's immersive.
So I think you're kind of savoring that world.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's kind of hard you'd have to define savor a little to be.
Interesting question.
Yeah. But I do tend to read fast. And like Christina said, if it's not flowing on the page, I don't have the time to waste on it. So.
Well, I think by the very nature of suspense and thrillers and mystery book, they're not things that you want to stop and I mean, you really want to kind of barrel right along, don't you think, with the storyline? Or
All night long.
Yeah, I agree.
another question that we is, have you ever thought, this is for Jayne, about collecting some of the recipes that I guess you share with your readers through social media into a cookbook?
No. I know a cookbook author, and it's hard. It's a very exact sort of writing. The cooking might not be that exact, but by the time you get it down for a recipe that will actually be reproducible by others, it's a science. It's an art. It's not an art. There's rules there. So I don't like those kinds of rules. I tend to be the kind of cook who throws things in because it looks good.
Any chance of a Christina Dodd cookbook, since you're
Oh.
such a big
I'm with Jayne. I have recipes on my website, and it's just a lot of work to write things down. I'll think, oh, this is just so easy. I'll write it down, and then it takes hours to get it on there, and and you have to remember things like, oh, they want to know what temperature to turn the oven on, and stuff like that. Well, what about you, John? You're the baker.
Yes.
Well, that is more of a science kind of thing. Yeah, no. Though I could see that both of you might want to think about maybe creating a recipe to tie into your next book as a special gift for your readers.
That's true.
Good idea. I do often throw rough recipes into the stories, or I'll explain what they're making in the kitchen, as they're talking about the murder or something, but it's pretty vague. And I do, like Christina, put some stuff up on my Facebook page occasionally, but these are really loosely organized recipes.
I don't know about you, Jayne, but with COVID, food is so important to me. And I find when I'm writing now, I'm like lovingly describing the food my characters are eating. It turns into this big description, and then I have to take it off.
Yeah, food has always been important to us, but it's really.
Yeah, really. What is your next meal?
As soon as we finish lunch here in the Krentz household, it's like, oh, only 6 more hours till dinner. What's for dinner?
You both mentioned how we're all kind of around the world experiencing the pandemic. And in some ways, it's changed the way publishers and authors interact with their readers. Many authors used to go on book tours, do real life events. Now it's all virtual. As we gradually move back to a world where we can get out more and interact more, do you see yourself going back to that old model? Do you want to stick with the virtual model? Talk a little bit about how the pandemic's affected you as a writer.
You want me to go? It's kind of the reward when you finished a book and the book comes out, to go to a bookstore and shake someone's hand who tells you how much you've meant to them. And sometimes they tell you very touching stories about when they've read the book and during their really tough times. And yeah, you can't, this is lovely. And I'm delighted to do it because, I'm desperate for company, John. But no, just the human contact is so important, and I will be thrilled to get back out there and meet readers. And the other thing about readers is you invariably realize that they're people just like you, and that's why they like your books. So.
Yeah, I'm with Christina on that. We had such a good time, Christina and me, the last time we were in your store there. It was just so much fun, and yep. Nothing quite replaces that. I got a hunch going forward, though, we're going to see more virtual events simply because the publishers view it as a way to reach so many more people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably going forward, it's going to be sort of a hybrid of the store visit and the virtual visit, would be my guess. I don't know. Whole new world out there.
Yes.
I can't believe it. It looks like we've almost reached our time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with those tuning in before we?
Well, I would just like to thank you for inviting us and for all that you've done for romantic suspense, which is what I write, and for the Woman in Jeopardy type story, which is what Christina's writing now. you've just given us, you've given us so much enthusiasm and support as writers that very grateful, very grateful.
Exactly, John. Thank you so much. Thanks to publish Poison Pen, and thanks to all the readers who came today and who will watch it in the weeks to come. This has been a lot of fun.
It has.
Thank you both so much, and thank you for tuning in. We've been chatting with Jayne Krentz. Her new book is All the Colors of Night, and Christina Dodd's new book is Wrong Alibi. Again, we do have signed copies, just a few left. If you're interested, contact us, and thank you for tuning in to another virtual event at the Poison Pen.
Bye-bye.
I think we're ending. Okay. That was wonderful. You both did a terrific job.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for the great interview. You did good.
Thank you for the great interview.
Oh, you're welcome. And you're close to selling out, which is great. So we'll try to move those last few copies. And
yes. Thank you. Well, there are no more hardcovers, John. They went back to press, and they won't be out any more hardcovers until at the end of July or January. So you have them.
You know, those collectors, and those are the ones that went first here at the bookstore, just because that's the collector thing, and the dating thing I think helped, and signing it. So you both were really very generous with your time to do that, and I know Barbara appreciates it, and I do too.
Tell her we said hi, and thanks for bringing us back.
So much, yes, and anytime.
Yeah, you have an open invitation for your next books whenever you'd like to come virtually or in person. We would love to have you.
We'll be there. Be careful what you ask for.
Well, we've already got a few reserves for Lady Has a Past, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we're building your audience one reader at a time here in Scottsdale. So.
Well, we do appreciate the support. Believe me, it's great to be associated anyway with a store like Poison Pen, because it's just everybody knows it. Everybody in publishing knows it. Everybody reads mystery knows it. Every author knows it. It's
when that lady in Minnesota wrote me and thanked me for connecting her with you and the bookstore. It was just, that was the greatest thing ever. I thought, my God, it actually works. She wish she could get my books there. So,
and it was wonderful of you. And the thing I forgot to tell you was you picked up a couple of the Kristen Ashley readers when we put that thing in their books. I noticed as the orders were coming in for your books, I thought those names looked familiar, and yeah, they did. So every little bit of cross marketing works.
Thank her.
I will. She's a very sweet person. She has another book coming in May, I think.
Okay.
Ooh, maybe we could do something with Jayne.
Yes, that would do.
I'm not going any. No plans for me. So.
Well, if you get that vaccine, Jayne, you're out.
I don't think so. I think I'll still be. Nothing's going to change for a while, even if we get the vaccine. We're all going to be living under this for a while, and they're still waiting. Yeah, the other shoe to drop here is how effective it's going to be against these new variants. So,
yeah, I know. Don't stir me up.
Fortunately, we have your books to look forward to, so that will keep us going.
It's so well. Have you seen the news, the book news, John, about how much the book sales have increased in the past year because of?
Yeah, people.
That's what we're hearing.
Either reading or being radicalized on the social media platforms. So,
well, a good reason to read.
Yeah.
The smart people are reading.
Pretty much.
Well, thank you again, both of you, and please do stay safe. And if anything you can do, let me know, and I'll be happy to. And we'll keep selling your books.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Jayne. Thanks, Christina. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.